What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Collision Live, back after our hibernation. Daniel here, and joined at the desk, as always, by the shaken to my stirred, Mr. Samuel David Kemp. What is up, stranger?
Oh, not much, man. It's good to have you back. It's you've been MIA for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've been gallivanting around the country,
going all over
around
the
the
place.
world, doing crazy stuff. But yeah, we haven't done this
We haven't been live.
Yeah, we haven't done our live show live in a month, a couple weeks.
So it's the Collision Live most of the time.
The Collision sometimes live.
8 out of 10 times.
Yeah, this is our reunion tour back after our taking some time off. Again, I've been gone the last 2 weeks, so we didn't have anything. We pre-recorded the one before that, but it's good to be back.
It is.
Catch up on all the crazy stuff going on in pop culture. Excited to have you guys join us back after the break to collide with some culture.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd share a little bit of why we weren't doing our live show live, where we weren't keeping on schedule. A couple weeks ago I was on vacation and wasn't around, but last week I had the opportunity to go to Seattle, which I've been to once before.
The city of rain.
Yeah, the city of rain that lived up to its name. It rained on us the whole time, and I was actually filming. I was there with my brother and my father. I think we have some pictures we can throw up.
Yeah.
For my brother and I just rewrote an Experiencing God Bible study that my grandfather had written, kind of for the relaunch of that, and really jazzed it up and for students. And so we were out there in Seattle for 5 days, filming nonstop. Early morning till late night, traveling all around the Olympic Park, and filming on a moving ferry boat, and filming in the middle of downtown Seattle with rain and people yelling at us, and cars driving by, and just kind of talking about this journey that God has us on. This picture right now is us right in front of Pike Place, the farmers market.
Yeah, famous.
They wouldn't let us get any closer.
Birthplace of Starbucks.
Yeah, I saw the original Starbucks. The line was out the door, so I didn't stop there. But
yeah.
So I got back, red-eye flight, got back Saturday morning. So I'm still recovering from that. But it was great. We'll probably have more. Maybe we'll throw a clip or something in once we get the edits. That Bible study is coming out in, I think, April.
Yeah, next spring. So
next spring was delayed because of COVID, but it's going to be good. It's going to be exciting. So we'll share more about that. But as fun as that was, it's good to be back home, back on the desk.
Nothing quite like your own bed and house. And
yeah, back with my co-pilot for some culture collisions. Yeah. We can jump right into our first section. This is pop culture news. And we don't have the buffer, but that's okay. We'll skip the buffer. We're still waking up from our time off. But a couple things that I noticed, catching up on the last week or so of pop culture. Kind of the biggies. The first one, the Book of Boba Fett, the new kind of spin-off of The Mandalorian, featuring kind of the original Mandalorian, Boba Fett. The poster release for that is Boba Fett just chilling in some throne in Jabba's palace. And the release date, which will be December 29th. So still gotta wait, but once Christmas is over and you're sad, there's still another present to look forward to.
Those post-holiday blues.
So we're looking forward to that. Something else I'm excited for. I think I'm excited for. Maybe I'm a little nervous for. Super Mario Bros. The movie they just announced the casting for that with some pretty big names playing the characters. We got Chris Pratt as Mario, Jack Black as Bowser, Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach. They even showed that some of the Donkey Kong characters are showing up in this Mario movie. Yeah. So this is like Illumination Studios. This is the same as the Minion movies. So they're probably the perfect studio to take this and do something cool with it. The history of Super Mario movies isn't all that pristine, but hoping this one's pretty fun. Speaking of Nintendo. I'm a retro gamer. I don't play a lot of new stuff, but I love my old nostalgic stuff. And they just announced that they're doing N64 games online through the Nintendo subscription. So these are all the games that I grew up. I still remember the Christmas I got the N64. It's the best day of my life. And at that point, I was 9 or whatever I was. So I'm excited to show my kids these games, even after they're in sleep for bed, as I continue to beat Ocarina of Time and some of those fun ones. Another one, Disney Plus Day, which is just another chance for Disney to market themselves. But November 12th, they're kind of trying to make a big thing of it.
Yeah.
They're releasing a bunch of movies: Shang-Chi, Jungle Cruise, Home Sweet Home Alone, the relaunch of Home Alone, Olaf shorts. They're kind of launching a bunch of Disney stuff and dropping movies all on that day, trying to make it a big thing so that people go and subscribe to their network. And the last one that you can't not acknowledge that William Shatner himself is going to space. I don't know if you saw that. He is jumping on
that's pretty
the Amazon guy's
on brand
spaceship, and he is flying to space.
He's taking the Bezos rocket.
Yeah, he is. So
The
he
Blue
will
Origin.
be, he'll be going to space in real life, not just on the Enterprise.
That's pretty cool.
But that is pretty. There's a sermon illustration in there somewhere about experiencing it for real. But so, what do you? Any of that stuff?
Yeah,
stand
well,
out?
I noticed you forgot to mention a couple of important pop culture things. Is one, there's like a animated Lego movie Star Wars Halloween special.
Terrifying Tales.
Terrifying Tales. It was terrifying and pretty funny, and some homages to terrifying tales of yesteryear, which that was kind of a fun thing to watch. Eminem also launched his restaurant, Mom Spaghetti, which I think is just
So funny.
so awesome. But yeah, I think that William Shatner going to space is kind of a really cool, like, full circle, it seems like, thing for him. But yeah, I think the Mario movie will be the most interesting.
And I'm not sure when that movie comes out. I'm assuming next year.
Because I feel like you've got the right. I feel like that's a pretty great cast. Like, and they're all very well loved, and so like I feel like there's gonna be a lot of hype around that.
Yeah, I think that I will definitely be taking my kids to see that. And yeah, the William Shatner thing. Sometimes we can be there's better ways to spend money than billions of dollars going to space, and that's a good discussion to have. But people are going to space. Like, that should still be cool today.
Yeah.
It's something that I've never been to space. I think it's cool. So yeah, we'll see what's going on. We'll follow some of those stories.
Yeah.
But to kind of jump into our first topic thing to talk about, it's kind of a general one. Again, I haven't been around. I haven't been as plugged into the newsy stories the last couple of weeks. So I thought we'd just sort of talk about some more general one. And this was actually inspired really by the filming I was doing out in Seattle. These camera guys. I mean, a couple different camera guys, sound guys, just real creative thinkers, and the way that they can see a shot and kind of envision it in their head and kind of execute it is awesome. I don't have an eye for the camera kind of stuff, so I thought we just and kind of getting to talk to some of them too. Just they feel called to kind of use these creative gifts to get these messages that other people have out into the world, and just doing some really neat stuff. And I don't know. I think we talk about culture, and we talk about art, and we've talked a lot about movies and the actual things that we create. But I don't know if we always necessarily talk as much just about the people, the creative. What is the role of this creative Christians? And I think sometimes that's even an area that kind of within the church gets overlooked, maybe. Not as plugged in. So I don't know. What do you think? What is if God has gifted someone creatively, whatever that is, and it doesn't have to just be like a painter. It can be a camera person, just a creative thinker. What sort of is the role? How should the church kind of steward that?
Yeah, well, I think it begins with actually stewarding it to begin with, and so I think every church is going to have some creative people in it. Like, I think just by definition, by purely statistically speaking, like, your church is going to have creative people in it. And so I think one is just to identify, for the church to identify who those people are and, what makes sense for them to contribute to, the broader body, and in what ways can that be really just encouraged and supported. And I think that's the big thing as far as the church as an institution coming alongside the creative people. And I think oftentimes it's sort of the other way. Like, it's, hey, we have this thing, and hey, you paint stuff, don't you? Can you come
we need a mural in our kids department.
Right, we need a mural in the kids playroom, and so can you come do that? Like, you're a graphic designer, can you just come do this thing for us? And less about that a dialogue between the church and then the creative individuals in the church. And I think the obvious one is music, and it's just well, you play music, so come be on the praise team, or play in the band or whatever, and that's sort of a natural, easy fit. But there's other ones like filming, painting, artistry, that kind of things, that there isn't necessarily a very clear, like it makes sense to just plug this person in here. And so I think that's where there just needs to be a dialogue between the church and those people to see what makes sense, and not just sort of this like, hey, you're creative, stick you here.
Yeah, I think the two-way, again, that's what, I've talked to people just because of what I do when I studied. People ask me kind of about some of that stuff, and that's a big one. I think the making sure that it's a two-way thing. I think sometimes, which is understandable. Churches always need volunteers. They always need workers.
Yeah.
And Christian, if we are just a Christian, like we should be volunteering and participating in the local church. That is part of our calling and our mission. And if we're creative, gifted creatively, like we should be using those gifts to bless the body, bless the church. But sometimes it can be a very kind of what can you do for me mentality.
Right.
Kind of less. I don't know how often just churches and people in the church kind of purposefully think about how can I this artist or this real creative person, like how can I kind of come alongside them and support what they're doing outside of the church that might not bless me individually, but will be part of the ministry out in the world. Like an artist or a writer or like a anyone that's we kind of do that for like ministry. Like if someone feels like I'm called to be a pastor, we bring them to the front and we pray over them and like really kind of this partnership. But if someone's like, hey, I was called to use my art to kind of spread beauty in the world and stuff, it's just not as built into sort of our, and maybe it is in some places, it's my own experience. It's not as like built into like the DNA of what we do.
Yeah.
It's more just, okay, you do that. But when you come,
Well, I think part of it is the church is very well equipped to equip members to go do church stuff. Like whether that's missions, whether it's ministry, it's pastoring, anything sort of related to like church work. Like the church is very well equipped to come alongside and walk with people who feel called to do church-related stuff. But there seems to be a lot of crickets when it comes to like anything outside of that. Like, so whether it's arts, whether it's just business or, any other sort of professions, there just seems to kind of be like, oh yeah, well, you're just go do your work and be blessed. And, there's not a whole lot of support around the body outside of sort of official like church capacity vocations, if you will. And so I think that a lot of times churches just don't know like, well, so what does that look like to support the artists that are in our church? Like we know what it looks like to support, someone who's called to missions. Like, there's this plan and it's very clear, like this is how we raise funds and help them go out and do whatever it is God's called them to do. But I feel like there's not as much like, well, so what does that look like?
Yeah, and I wonder if some of it too is just like a disconnect between understanding this like the missional aspect of kind of the creative things that people do, that that using the arts and stuff is a part of the greater church mission. It's not it's different than going and preaching on the side of the street corner or something, but it doesn't mean it's like not important or not.
Right.
And that's one of the cool things, even this about the Bible, is you kind of see kind of all throughout, like in the narratives of the Bible, like with God calling, them the artists to build the temple and like just in the tabernacle, and like how clear it says like God called them, gave them the skill to accomplish this, but also just like the fact that we have like, I think the biggest book in the Bible, Psalms. The fact that like when God was putting together the Bible, like songs were a key part in how he wanted to communicate himself. Like Song of Songs, like tons of poetry, and that like when God revealed himself, like he did it largely through it's not just a book of songs, but like those are a big part of it. Like,
right.
There's something about kind of the arts and creativity that is sort of an essential thing to kind of communicating who God is. And I don't know if we necessarily mirror that always, like, within the church. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think the church often does. I mean, I think some do, but as a whole, I think the church falls short in that respect. And I think a lot of it is just sort of, like you said, a misunderstanding of, or just a sort of misalignment of understanding how the church and creative individuals can work together, rather than just like, like this person does like art stuff, and so they can help with this one project that we have, and so what does that what does that relationship look like? And I think it can be a number of things. It doesn't have to be like a one size fits all for all contexts and all church work and all creative people within the church. And so, I think there's a lot of work I think that can be done to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, and this isn't to be like, negative, the church, capital C, all the flaws. There's a lot of, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I've been supported by tons of people in the church.
Yeah.
So it's not like, the church never does this. The church does do this. I just think it can do more. And I think kind of the creative gifts, the creative people are such a resource, especially in our today's culture, which is so driven by kind of aesthetic thinking, that it's sort of an untapped thing.
Yeah, I definitely
and I think it can be as simple as just seeking out the artists, the creative people in our, in the community God's put us in, and this, which is what I've always tried to do. And just how do I encourage them, and just listen to them talk about what they do, and either give them advice or just support them. This one person supporting you can make a lot of difference for an artist. I think that's a simple thing that we can all do. But let us know if you're a creative person in your church, if you felt supported, if there's things that the church could do that you think would be helpful to support you. Let us know. Again, I think it's just a learning process for all of us. But the next section, speaking of learning and teaching and dropping some truth, the next section that we have is Host Corner. So this is my go. Back last time we had an episode, Sam rambled on about one of his nerdy things that he's interested in. But as I was thinking about this week, I was thinking one of the things that we just don't talk about enough as a culture, as a society, as a human race, is Ewoks. Yeah, I think there's definitely room to have more discussion about these lovable teddy bears. So I will take my opportunity to talk about Ewoks. So Ewoks, one of the crazy things that kind of shows the depraved state of our society is that you often hear that Ewoks ruin Star Wars. Ewoks are the worst part about Star Wars. Things jumped the shark once they threw these sort of teddy bears in. Cynical is just to sell it to kids and to sell toys and these cute things, as if they could ever overthrow the Empire. It all came apart, which is complete and utter bantha fodder, if you will. Ewoks are one of the best parts about Star Wars. Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars movie ever made, will ever be made. And Ewoks are such an embodiment of what Star Wars is all about. Of course they overthrew the Empire. One of the major themes all throughout Star Wars is no matter how kind of technological and stuff you get, sort of beyond that, there's sort of the intangibles that, like the Force or like these, lovable creatures that you don't account for that can overcome. And the Ewoks are just such a perfect embodiment of what Star Wars is all about, and one of the best parts of Star Wars in general.
Good. I would tend to agree with that.
No rebuttal?
No, I would say that's, not to mention how cute they are.
And Star Wars is for kids.
Yeah.
It was made with kids in mind.
Yeah, well, I think it is. Ewoks are the very reason why they can overthrow a big galactic evil empire, because they are Ewoks. Yeah. Because they're overlooked and thought of to not be capable of people, rising to the occasion. People
forget that they're
the ultimate underdog.
They're a minute away from eating the Luke Skywalker and Han. They're gonna eat them. These aren't just they're not just teddy bears. They're gonna eat these people alive. I'm sure they're
hungry teddy bears.
These are violent. This is a violent species. So again, I think I am all on team Ewoks. I've even seen the Ewok movies. I've seen the Ewok cartoon series.
Yeah.
You can't have enough Ewoks. So hashtag Ewoks matter. But then so the next topic maybe not quite as significant as defending the dignity of Ewoks is something that is actually something I thought about us talking about on one of the live streams weeks ago when we were doing it, and we just didn't because we were talking about other stuff. Yeah. And a different quote kind of brought the conversation back into the discussion. It's something I don't think we've ever kind of dialogued about, and that's the whole kind of gender swapping discussion debate that's kind of been going on for a couple of years now, with the when they did the all female Ghostbusters, and there's sort of this movement to it
was all what was it, Ocean's 8 or something?
Yeah,
it was all female,
the female version, and kind of it's not the same as the Me Too movement, but when some of that kind of discussions, as far as like the sort of the inequalities or gender, and like women need more opportunities. Kind of the initial push to do that seemed to be from Hollywood was just take all like the popular male characters and like make them female. And one of the ones that's been that's been kind of talked about a bunch is James Bond. There's been kind of this movement, I guess, to have a female James Bond. Well, they asked in an interview, the current James Bond, Mr. Daniel Craig, if he foresaw a woman being a James Bond, and this was his answer, which got a different responses to it, good and bad. But he says no. The answer to that is very simple. There should simply be better parts for women and actors of color. Why should a woman play James Bond when there should be a part just as good as James Bond, but for a woman? And again, he got mixed responses to that. Some people saying like,
I can't imagine.
Yeah, he said something in an interview, and the internet was not in agreement, which was a shocker. But just saying, hey, we don't need to just go. We don't need a female Indiana Jones. We don't need, we don't need like we don't need to like just change all the characters we have. Just make characters that are give opportunities to women. And so again, it's part of like a larger discussion with the James Bond. But what do you think about this? 'Cause I think that it is more nuanced than I think people give it credit for, but it is an important discussion that I think goes deeper, more to the heart of how do we dignity in women and right, all that kind of equality and all those things.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Any
yeah, I mean,
Mr. Craig?
I would say if that kind of stuff, it just depends on the character and sort of how it's made up. And I don't think it makes sense for James Bond. Like nothing about the James Bond character, I don't think seems to be right to have a woman play James Bond.
Because here's the thing, because you can change like his skin color, because there's been a movement for like no one really has a problem with that. Like, but I think it's this thing about like masculinity, and whether that's toxic or not is a different discussion. But like,
sure,
that's such a part of James Bond. You can make him an Asian, you can make him anything, but like to make him a woman just seems like that's not the same character anymore. I guess
it's a different character, and so I think when those sort of things don't necessarily matter, then I think it's fine. Like you can change. I think there was one, I forget what it was now, but there was some lesser character in a recent movie was changed, I think, to be a woman. I forget what movie that was now, but and so like I think it's been done. Like Doctor Who, I think probably is one of the first ones to do this. He did that. Like the latest season, and that's been going, like that show's been going on forever. But the latest Doctor Who is a woman, and I think that's a little bit different because it's Doctor Who. So like the very character of the Doctor like allows, I think, for it to be a man or a woman, and so in that instance, I think it's fine. But then for something like this, where it's like it's so obviously a male character, I don't really see why you would want to. Like, why change that rather than just, like Daniel Craig said, just have, like, there's plenty of great female leads that, stories about women that I think would be really great to tell. And it's like, rather than try to, like, redo something, like, just do something new.
Because here's the counterpoint. And again, I think, my own cards, like, I think 95% of the time that the gender swap thing is a bad idea. But the counterpoint, like the 5% of me is kind of saying, there's a reason why this is like the 25th James Bond movie. Like, that we, or that like Harrison Ford is still suiting up to play Indiana Jones and he's like 79 years old. Like, the kind of the idea of just go make another James Bond. Like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you have the property, like the intellectual property of like a James Bond, then you also have like the studio budget. You have like the safety net.
Right.
So then you have the money to get a good director, and you have the money to market it. Like there's a reason why like a Jason Bourne. There's a couple examples of like a new version of that, but there's not John Wick, maybe another one. Like, but there's not a lot of like this. Go make another female James Bond that's just as big. Like. It's you kind of go away from all the resources and like kind of from even if you get a star, you need the money for it. But like like a Scarlett Johansson who's a spy or something, like it's not as easy necessarily to like,
Right.
and I think some of the pushback to like the Daniel Craig stuff is just like, if traditionally it's all these action roles and movies have all the properties are kind of around men, then like they kind of have the corner on the market that like there's just not room to like add a bunch of new stuff in there, in the schedules. They're not going to like not schedule a James Bond movie to make room for a brand new property. So that's why I think it is a little more nuanced than just like, man, just go make new ones. Like,
yeah, well, it's sort of like saying, like, oh, you don't like Facebook? Well, why don't you just build your own like social media platform? Yeah. It's like, well, okay, like you can, but you have these sort of network effects and the scaling effects of, it's very hard to unseat a juggernaut like Facebook from social media in the same way that I think some of these like legacy properties, like just telling people to go, well, just make the female version of this like a whole new thing. Like, yeah, like that is a disadvantage for sure. But I also think it's not like, I don't know. I think there is room for other types of films, and like there's going to always be sort of the legacy movies out there that are sort of the reliable paychecks for these studios. But I think I would love to see studios taking more risk on films that maybe aren't going to be like the next Marvel, whatever. That it's just like a reliable check to cash. But
and you can see there is, because again, like the female to male back and forth thing is sort of a part of the larger of just like representation in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can get like lumped in with like all of like the negative aspects of that. And you think of all the Oscars, they all their rules to win, and like you can kind of get caught up in that. I think as Christians, because of the negative, like the excess of it, I guess, like sometimes we don't give enough credit to like it does matter. Like there is, and there is room to do it. Like the Shang-Chi, the new Marvel's been doing a lot more of like Black Panther, like telling stories with, or like even Rey and Finn, a woman and then a person of color both igniting like a lightsaber in Star Wars. It hadn't really happened, or at least not very very often. So like there is part of that I think Christians, I don't know if it's necessarily like a moral imperative to do it, but like it is like kind of a neighborly thing that like Christians should care about.
Yeah, and I think that I think like the Star Wars one is a great example of incorporating that into sort of the larger story, and obviously with certain properties, I think just allow that to happen. So like the Marvel stuff, the DC stuff, Star Wars, any number of sort of large franchises like that, I think are better positioned to be a bit more exploratory with how they cast and the type of people that they have for their leading roles, whereas other properties may not be as like established properties. I think like a James Bond.
That just seems token to me. It's sort of like
it's just
like now you got James Bond. Like the womanizer is now a woman. Like
so it seems a bit too like kind of on the nose. I think with James Bond in particular, because like okay, so like you're just for the sake of equality, you're just kind of making it a woman. Like so, it just doesn't seem to make as much sense. Whereas like Rey and Finn, like. I think that worked really well. Like I think that was
that's debatable. Yeah, the characters worked well. The movies,
Yeah, well, sure. Like there's lots of issues with the new Star Wars movies, but I do think like something like that, where it's a bit more of a natural flow, and it's not just like everybody knows that this is like the token person. Like nobody wants that. I don't think. Like I don't think that feels good to anyone involved. It's like to just be sort of the token person for this class of people.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, something I've been kind of working through is just trying to not let like the negative make me look at the whole issue negative. Yeah. And like I know, it was eye opening to me, even like when Black Panther and some of these, or Wonder Woman, like just like how much those movies meant to people that